he said, except it be for fornication. And this is where the church today is getting it wrong. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Pure Words with OD, a platform where we discuss Bible principles and morals. In today's video, we will be looking into what Jesus meant when he said in Matthew 5:32, everyone who divorces his wife except on the ground of sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery. Does this mean that one can only divorce on the ground of sexual immorality? We will be taking our Bible texts from the King James Bible, referencing the Greek translation. The church teaches that except for adultery, one cannot get divorce. Is that what Jesus actually meant? Reading through that chapter of Matthew 5, which was the Sermon on the Mount, we can see that Jesus was speaking in parables while he addressed the crowds. Reading from verse 27 to 28, it says, Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. He could not possibly be saying that looking at a woman lustfully calls for the same punishment as committing adultery with her. It is a parable to warn us not to nurse the thought of adultery in our hearts. And from verse 29 to 30 it says, And if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. 30. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. It could not possibly be saying to cut off your hands or foot or to pluck out your eyes. It is a parable with which he conveyed a message. And the message says to dissociate ourselves from anyone or anything that could lead us to hell. And from verse 31 to 32 it says, It had been said, Whosoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. But I say unto you, that whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causeth her to commit adultery. And whosoever shall marry her that is divorced, committed adultery. Before the introduction of divorce certificates, married people were separating without a clear cut as to whether or not their marriage had ended. When a wife was separated from her husband, one could not tell if the separation was temporal or if the marriage had ended. And if the woman goes to be with another man while being separated from her husband, she would be committing adultery because she is still bound to her marriage. This was hindering the women from remarrying. But with the introduction of divorce certificates, the woman now have proof that her marriage had ended. This would accord her the privilege to remarry. That was how divorce certificate was introduced in the first place. And because back then, a wife did not have the authorization to end her marriage. She could leave her husband, which is separation, but she could not divorce him. Only the husbands had the rights to secure a divorce. And when a husband refuses to issue a divorce certificate to the wife, she remains bound to her marriage, even when the marriage had technically ended. Some of the husbands were using this privilege to punish their separated wives by refusing to issue them a divorce certificate, thereby denying them the advantage of remarrying and moving on with their lives. So Moses put it into law that failure to issue a divorce certificate would mean that you cause her to commit adultery if she goes to be with another man. So Jesus said, it had been said, that is, Moses told you, that if you must be separated from your wives, you might as well make it official by giving her a divorce certificate as a proof that the marriage had ended, so that she can be free to be with another. He then went further to say in verse 32, "But I say unto you, that whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causeth her to commit adultery, and whosoever shall marry her that is divorced committeth adultery." So what Jesus is saying here is that, yes, according to the law of Moses, failure to issue a divorce certificate would mean that you cause her to commit adultery. But in addition to that, if your reasons for leaving her is not justifiable, that is, if you do not have a good reason for leaving her, you also cause her to commit adultery. And whosoever shall marry her that is divorced committed adultery. The reason Jesus addressed this issue was because back then, married people were abusing the law of Deuteronomy 24 by divorcing their spouses for little or no reason. People were marrying and then casually divorcing their spouses after when they lost interest. No matter what a spouse did, their partner could divorce them if in their eyes it was a good reason to get rid of them. So Jesus said, if you must divorce her, be sure to have a justifiable reason to do so. And if you must do so, be sure to make it official by issuing her a divorce certificate as a proof that the marriage had ended. So Jesus' instruction did not overrule Moses' commandment on divorce. Rather, it complemented it by saying, be sure to have a justifiable reason to do so. Now, what is a justifiable reason? Note that Jesus said, except it be for fornication. According to Jesus, fornication is the only justifiable reason for divorce. And you and I know that married people who indulge in extramarital affairs do not commit fornication, they commit adultery. But he didn't say except for adultery, he said except it be for fornication. And this is where the church today is getting it wrong. If Jesus had meant adultery, he would have said adultery and not fornication. So let us find out what Jesus meant by fornication. Let's not forget that the New Testament Bible was originally written in Greek. Greek was the language of scholars during the years of the composition of the New Testament. So the New Testament authors wrote in Greek. Now, the word fornication is translated from the Greek word porneia. Adultery is translated from the Greek word moikao. These are two different words with two different meanings. If Jesus had meant adultery, he would have said adultery, and the Greek word moikao would have been used. But he didn't. Instead, he used the word porneia. Now, what is the difference between the two? Adultery refers to extramarital affairs. Any form of sex outside of marriage is considered to be adultery. Fornication is sex before marriage. Any form of sexual intercourse between those who are not yet married is fornication. But the Greek word porneia covers much more than that. Porneia means a disregard to accepted rules and standards. It means unrestrained, either legally or morally, especially towards sexual sin, but not exclusive to sexual sin. When porneia is used in the context of marriage, it means a refusal to conform to marital covenant standards. God has laid down rules and standards for marriage. These rules and standards constitutes a covenant. Porneia is when we break these rules and standards. It may include adultery, but not limited to adultery. So porneia, like the word uncleanness, which Moses used in the Old Testament, is an umbrella word that encompasses all forms of unruly behavior or acts that goes against marriage covenants. Considering the facts that there are other offenses that could be worse than adultery, it could not have meant that one can only divorce on the ground of adultery. Jesus could not have meant that it is okay to be with a spouse who wants you dead, but not with the one who cheated on you. When a spouse does not love or respect their partner, that is an unruly behavior and it goes against marriage covenants. When a spouse is physically or mentally abusing their spouse and has refused to change their ways, that is an unruly behavior and it goes against marriage covenants. When a spouse intentionally refuses to provide for their household, that is an unruly behavior and it goes against marriage covenants. When a spouse denies their partner of their conjugal rights, that is an unruly behavior and it goes against marriage covenants. When a spouse is sexually molesting their child, be it biological, step or adopted child, that is an unruly behavior and it goes against marriage covenants. When a spouse wants their partner dead, that is an unruly behavior and it goes against marriage covenants. While some of these unruly behaviors can be of a zero tolerance, unruly behavior, if not stopped but persist in a marriage, divorce therefore can be recommended. God hates divorce the same way God hates murder. It bleeds God's heart when an innocent person is killed. Yet, he gave his only begotten Son Jesus, an innocent man, to be killed, that mankind may be redeemed from bondage. It wasn't in God's original plan for an innocent man to be killed. But because sin had created a barrier between mankind and God, there became a situation on ground that needed to be fixed. God had to do what he hates so as to reestablish a relationship with mankind. Likewise, it wasn't in God's original plan for anyone to get divorced. But because a person is in bondage of an abusive marriage, God had to do what he hates by recommending divorce as a way out. God hates something does not mean that he will not allow it if it is for the benefit of mankind. God sometimes allows what he hates in order to achieve what he loves. Thanks again for watching Pure Words with OD, and I will see you on our next video. God bless you. Bye-bye.